Welcome to Let's Talk Rescaled, the podcast where we dive deep into the heart of justice reform. Hosted by Noa Shoshan and brought to you by RESCALED, a European movement dedicated to reshaping our approach to incarceration. In each episode, we explore the concept of detention houses instead of large prison institutions, shedding light on the voices, stories, and ideas that are transforming the landscape of justice across Europe and beyond. From policymakers to practitioners, advocates to academics, join us as we engage in insightful conversations with those on the front lines of systemic change. Today we are joined by Gert Jan Slump and Tanja Jadnanansing from the Netherlands. Gert Jan is a criminologist and innovator in the field of criminal justice and restorative justice. He's co-founder of the Restorative Justice Netherlands Foundation, which is also where the Netherlands office of RESCALED is based. Gert Jan is also co-initiator of youth courts in the Netherlands. He focuses on democratization processes and relations between professionalization and meaningful action. Tanja Jadnanansing is the chair of the executive board of the Amsterdam Zuidoost or Amsterdam South East Council since 2018. Skilled in politics, coaching, presenting, education, and youth mentoring, and her law degree from Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, Tanja is committed to building a community where love and law go hand in hand. We'll be talking lots more about the district of Amsterdam Zuidoost in this episode, but first and foremost, welcome Gert Jan and Tanja. Thank you for being here. Before we really dive into the actual content of the episode and when we talk about Amsterdam Zuidoost and also restorative cities, I would just like to hear from the both of you. How do you know each other? How did you meet? I know you've worked together before. I think it would be nice to touch on this first. So whichever one of you wants to start talking about that.
Thank you for the question. Actually, Gert Jan, you have to help me here because I don't know. I think it was a friend of ours who introduced us. Is this true?
Yeah, I had a thing to do in Amsterdam to make a research on the group violence intervention thing of David Cassidy of the John Jay University in New York to see whether or not it might be feasible to apply this kind of approach in Amsterdam. And yes, we were connected by the coordinator youth and safety in Hilde van Heuningen. And she said, you have to talk with Tanja. And I said, I will do that. And it was meant to be an interview, but it became a very, how would I call that, existential dialogue on governance, on safety, on the horizons of criminal justice and restorative justice. And of course, there were a lot of connection that we discovered that we had in common. For example, the developments around youth courts in South East is a very important connection we have already. So I think that was the start, Tanja.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think it was both because of our really deep felt empathy for people as a whole, and especially for people who other people think that they are not good enough, they don't fit in, blah, blah, blah. And then I think this is our connection, that we really feel that everybody should be included.
That's it.
And yeah, I think we can say that now we are not just people who are acquainted by this law concept, but also on a more, I think, friendly and spiritual level.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And that goes beyond the things that we call business or whatever. It's like well, what is the kind of challenges we have in our society? And there's a common thread on wanting to deliver on that, the challenges from a common background, political and spiritual, I guess, as well. So,
yeah. And I think also the quest for social justice. And and I think that because we are so really passionate about bringing good to people, and we use the law, we use politics to get there. So a lot of people are also, just saying, I want to be part of this also. So it's beginning to be like a sort of a movement, like meeting of the minds, movement on social justice,
it's
something like that. Yeah.
Really nice. Thank you for sharing. And I think you already touched upon a really important aspect, that a lot of the quote unquote work that a lot of us do is not just business, but it's also just that kind of demand for social justice, and that also is necessary if we want to go against systems which have existed for decades or even centuries and try to undo a lot of the harm that has been done. So that's very much part of also what we're here to talk about today. And that also reminds me of something I wanted to ask you, Tanja. I read or heard that you like to live with lef. So for the English-speaking audience, it's a word in Dutch which roughly translates to courage. It's also an acronym for listening, for empathy, and for feedback. I think I read that you developed this together with some young students. Could you tell us a bit about that, and maybe how do you use that in your daily life? Is that also very much connected to what you believe in and the work that you do in Amsterdam?
Yeah, actually this concept came, I was a guest lecturer at a school called OSP, Openbare Scholengemeenschap Bijlmer. And at that point, I was a member of parliament. And I just gave these guest lecturers. And then there was this really horrible thing in France with Charlie Hebdo. I don't know, you all remember, of course. And in my classroom, there was this huge, not a dialogue, but it was more sort of a fight. When I came into the classroom, the half of the class said, we don't want to talk about, we don't want to talk anymore to the other half of the class, because it was like a debate on who is being right and who's being wrong, and about being from Islamic background or not. And it was rather not a very positive environment. And I said, okay, guys, I don't want this in my classroom. So what can we do? How can we come together again? And then one of the students said, well, you come up with a method, because we don't know anymore. And they were about 15, 16 years old. And I was like, okay, a method, what kind of method? And then, I don't know, just in a split second, I said, okay, so we need lef. We need courage. And then I said, okay, lef, what can lef be? And just in that moment, I said, that would be listening, empathy, and feedback. And then the half of the classroom said, yes, we can work with that. And then during, I think, 12 weeks, we just worked with that. And, everything begins with relationship. Everything begins with, I see you and you see me, and let's listen to each other. And then actually with these students together, we developed a method. And we even came on TV with this method. And a lot of these kids still use, when you see their LinkedIn profiles, they still use this, like, I'm a left ambassador. So I think, this is huge. For me, it's a huge compliment on how we can develop methods together. So you come up with this idea, but then, it should be like also with social justice, and also with what I'm doing with Gert Jan. People should really see it like, okay, wow, this is a light bulb moment for me. I want to be part of it. And the biggest compliment is that these kids actually put this on their profile, that they are left ambassadors. And it's like, this is like 15 years ago, I guess. And they still want to work with this method. So this is me. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I think there's also multiple acronyms or methods or ways to interact with each other, but definitely also in times like today, where we live in a world that's increasingly polarizing, something like this is really, really important to speak with each other, and also on the topic of criminal justice, which is what we'll touch in a bit more today. How do you feel about that, Gert Jan? Do you like the acronym, or do you have something else up your sleeve which you like?
No. The beauty of encounters with Tanja and encounters with people in Amsterdam South East is the way how to discover things almost ethnographically. So it's there, and it only needs to be trapped, discovered, not even mentioned, because or maybe give people small tools, frameworks like LEF, to come up with new ideas. So I'm really approaching the things I am admiring in Amsterdam Southeast with modesty. I don't come in with a strict program or anything. Yes, of course, I have the background of restorative justice, in which it's all about empathy, empathetic conversations, dialogue, etc., etc. Not only on the micro level when it comes to relationships, but also when things go wrong within organizations, or we discover that systems are producing the things that we don't want them to produce because it's not benevolent to communities. And of course, then my framework is restorative justice, but I only have to admire the things that I see together with Tanja in Tanja's work, because she is living in Amsterdam South East. She is the chair of the borough there. So in modesty, I'm admiring and almost registering ethnographically what's happening there, to learn, and not to learn people, but to teach myself from the root sources, not the root causes, but the root sources of what dialogue, community, diverse community, inclusive community might mean, including the challenges that a borough in Southeast is challenging, because it's not colorful in everything. No. But it's so rich. It's so strong. What I see that I only with modest admiration approaching the things that I'm doing together with Tanja and people in Southeast.
Yeah, and if I can just comment on that, because I think what Gert Jan is doing is like really coming into Amsterdam Southeast with this modest approach, and then people open up, because when you come into Amsterdam Southeast and you're like, I'm all that, I am like this academic person, I know everything, then people they close up. They are like, you whatever, seen that, done that, whatever. But if you come and really you just be modest, listen first, take in the wisdom of the crowd, of the people who have been living in Amsterdam Southeast. Amsterdam Southeast is 100,000 people who live there, 173 cultures and ethnicities, and they have a lot of challenges. So it's a balancing act. The Bijlmer is a balancing act. We have a lot of wonderful things happening there, especially like in a community caring for each other. But then again, you have poverty, you have criminality, all those things. So high rates of that. And then you have high rates of social capital, people looking after each other, people wanting, when it was Corona and people were in their houses, people were like screaming through the windows, do you have enough food? Because otherwise I will bring to you. So this is the caring part. But then we have another part. We have too much crime in Amsterdam Southeast. So we have to talk about that also. And if you come into Amsterdam Southeast and you come there with this modest approach, people will first offer you some food, offer you something to drink. And then we just, we have this like an equal position. And from that equal position, we come and talk to each other about what is really going on. And then we just dive into the hidden gems. You see the community, you see the way people have their dialogues. And then you just bring the academic approach into like equal with how people are approaching each other. And then you meet each other. And then we call this the love and law approach. And first we just come into the love. And love is not like romantic love, but it's just like Gert Jan is saying, a modest approach. I love you as being this person who is trying his or her best in a society which is really sometimes hard. And then you just work with that. And we get the most beautiful conversations, I think, Gert Jan, because of this modest approach. Maybe you can talk about the way you came in when we had this conversation on restoring the herdenking slavernijverleden. I just don't know how to say it in English.
Yeah, the remembrance of the colonial period, so the post-colonization period. Yeah. And well, of course, I'm a white man, so I need to be modest, at the least on that topic, because I am on the white part of the story. But I'm in because the white part is part of the story.
Yes.
And we met, and first of all, from this modest approach, I asked the people that were present there and invited by Tanja, please allow me to be part of your circle, because I'm not living here. I'm here sitting side by side with Tanja. So please allow me to enter the group. But I need your authorization to step in. Because of that, I think I was adopted in this meeting, and maybe beyond this meeting. And we had a really intense conversation about what we know. Two important elements in restorative justice is the procedural part and the distributive part. So somebody somehow, or some people, came up with the idea to spend money into the post-colonial, the remembrance, etc., have education programs, because it's still working on and on and on in our societies, and we need to have education and other kind of activities to be very much aware of the past, of the present, and of the future, how we can do things to prevent this institutionalization of structural harm and injustice to people, between people. There was a very vulnerable discussion on how the government, the national government, came up with a certain amount of money, but the people involved were never asked if this would be the distributive part, the amount of money, the bunch of money that was laying on the table, was the outcome of a fair procedure in which they were involved to think about, okay, what needs to be done? The first question, what needs to be done, and how do we get there together to have a fair, not a solution, but a fair way of approaching the harms that we encounter now, from the past to the present and to the future. So it was really, I think I never would have had this experience, because that's what it was. It was more than a dialogue on the history that I am part of, even as a white man. So, and I want to be part of it, because I want to know the pains that we are facing when we think about colonization and decolonization, and the pains that it costs. So and this is restorative justice again. So I mentioned the procedural and the distributive part. It's always about the pain and honoring. Well, honoring. It's about being very honest on the pain and going to the pain, as for example, Mfo and Desmond Tutu are pointing at as well, in the apartheid, overcoming the apartheid in South Africa. So the pain is very essential to honor it, to see it, and to say, I see your pain, and maybe there is a wound in myself as well that's connected with your wounds, and we have to come over this, if possible, in a fair way, procedural and in the distributive aspect as well. Yeah. So the outcome.
So I think, Gert Jan, that this restorative justice is, for me, this is the way Amsterdam South East could, take next steps in being excellent. Yeah. Because what I want for this borough is to be this excellent place where, we have the best education, we have the best housing, we have the best of opportunities. We're really not there yet, but I think that the approach of restorative justice should not just be in, more in a way of more criminal and everything. So that's a part. But I think that actually restorative justice, one of my colleagues who is really a fan now of restorative justice, Simeon Blom, he said, Tanja, actually restorative justice might be the answer we are looking for in Amsterdam South East, because it's this approach of being modest first, and then listening first, having the empathy, listening to feedback, taking in the wisdom of the crowd, the wisdom of people who have been in Amsterdam South East years and years. We bring in restorative justice, and then this could be the stepping stones to excellence. And I just love this dialogue. And I was like, wow, I didn't see it that way, but because of my colleague, who is really now into restorative justice, I think this might be the answer, really.
Yeah. I like the connection that you in conversation with him are making to the challenges we face in the now and the bright bright dreams we have about the future. Because in classical criminal justice we're always facing like the negative parts. It's about negative safety. While to me we do not first of all need to think about what should be counter, throw back or whatever, but what needs our attention, what needs to be stimulated to be there and to overcome the things that we see in the past that we are facing as problems or challenges. I like to call it challenges, but that's a language thing. But I really do believe that this approach that you are now describing is a way out of the negative concepts and frames that we tend to use when we think about issues that we have, of course, about justice, etc., property, social justice, criminal justice. To think about fair justice to the brighter future.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Maybe to provide even some context for the people listening, because you already beautifully transitioned to Amsterdam South East, which is why I asked both of you to come on this podcast, because with Rescaled, we just published a blog post which was written by Gert Jan and Laura, Restorative Justice Netherlands, and you, Tanja, you also talked about this topic to be able to publish it, and the whole idea behind this is that we, with Rescaled, through our Inspire project, which is incarceration and social purpose in restorative cities, we're trying to look at, okay, what makes a city a good place to implement a detention house? How can we kind of look at the local, the urban, the economic, the social context and see like what characters of a city make it easier to implement a detention house, but what could also challenge a detention house, or what are some of the challenges that we face now with prisons, for example, which are nearby some cities. And I think for this also, that the part that REN, so Restorative Justice Netherlands, has been doing mostly with this project is looking into that. Okay, what is a restorative city? Is this something that we can even define, or is it sort of a process, or is it certain elements that we look for? And you also already mentioned that, you know, you think Amsterdam South East could do better in terms of restorative justice. So maybe, Gert Jan, would it be good for you to just give a bit of a perspective from area inside, because a lot of people see restorative justice also from a very classical perspective and maybe a more narrow perspective. So maybe just giving a bit of the view, like what do we mean when we say restorative justice, and what does that mean for cities?
Well, let me start and then hand it over to Tanja again. So the minimalist or the classical approach of restorative justice is to think about mediation and facilitated conflict resolution, restorative conferencing, etc., etc. So it's a piecemeal thing. So it's, there is a conflict and we can solve it or not solve it. We can approach it with a criminal justice approach or with a restorative justice approach. To me, restorative justice is more about the way we look at our whole justice system. Not let's keep aside criminal justice, but our justice system, together with the way we are sanctioning, we are taking care of people, we are going through the whole process, because there is a history before the incident and there is a history after the sanctioning. So, to me, it's a more maximalist, as Lode Walgraaf is calling it in Belgium, or what we like to call a consequential approach, because we need to be very consequential. It's a way of changing your lenses, have another perspective on justice than you had before. Coming to that and relating that to sanctioning and the deprivation of liberty, or call it imprisonment or detention, I really do believe that we can do better in our detention approach than we are doing now. And that's the promise for me from a small-scale detention. And I had discussions with Tanja about what would happen if we have a caring community, let's call it a detention house, in which we don't put people who temporarily need something else than we can offer in our well, normal or traditional communities, keeping them inside the communities in a place which is on a humane basis suitable for those people to live temporarily, to be maybe deprived of parts of their liberty or taken care of without the whole system or the whole network of the natural people that they are acquainted with, and maybe the professionals that are taking care of them in a borough like Southeast. So not excluding those people outside, sending them to the northern part of the Netherlands to be there for months, but stay inside with the extra things they need from a positive, again, bright perspective on the future. So to restore what's needed to give those people, together with all the people in community, a possibility to do better, to become the person that they want to be. So that's, I think, might be the challenge of our whole detention system, and that needs to be a shift from large-scale detention centers to small-scale, well, borough jails maybe. And of course, there are some promising developments in Amsterdam South East, not now related to criminal justice, but to youth care, which I find fascinating. So because a youth jail now is transformed into a community. But Tanja, maybe you can talk a little bit more on that topic, or on the challenge of sanctioning and detention in the future to be part of the local arrangements.
Yeah, I do believe that, as we mentioned before, Amsterdam Southeast has the whole framework is there.
Yeah.
With our neighborhood court, with our youth courts, with all the dialogues we now have on, when I came into the office as chair 6.5 years ago, people were like, we knew that in Amsterdam Southeast we had this high criminal rates, but then people were like, don't talk about it because we have this negative framing of Amsterdam Southeast. And I said, no, this is also Amsterdam Southeast. We have two sides of the story. One story is wonderful, multicultural, vibrant, everything, blah, blah. Then we have the other side. So, it's fair to talk about all of the sides of Amsterdam Southeast. So we had these dialogues in all of our community centers. At first, people were a little bit annoyed by me, like, why? This is negative, don't do it. But then again, they saw that if we could talk about it all out in the open, I had this meeting, which was one of the most beautiful meetings in my entire life. We had mothers coming in, and there were mothers of victims and mothers of actually the offenders, the people who, young people who were doing all kinds of stupid things to the others. And even one had a knife and used a knife and made a victim. And we had this meeting, and then the mothers were talking about, how their life was not any good anymore because of her son being threatened by other youngsters. And then one of the mothers, she just, she was in tears, and then she stood up and she said, actually, I am one of the mothers of those youngsters who run around threatening others. And, I feel really bad about this. And, I feel so, I don't know. And she was just crying. And then the mothers from the other side came up and they just hugged her. And they said, we are mothers also. And what can we do together? And this was the beginning of a wonderful collaboration between mothers. And they are now in a group called Southeast Safety Movement. And so there are mothers from the victims and mothers from people who are causing these stupid things, and they are working together. So the environment in Amsterdam Southeast is one where we really condemn the crime itself, but we don't condemn the people who did those things. We say they are still our sons, they are still our daughters. So I think we have the environment to welcome small-scale detention centers. I think we are a community who can, because of our, our compassion, we know that, life gives us lemons sometimes. And I think Southeast is the place where we make lemonade out of it. We should, we bring in the lemons and we make lemonade. We bring in the water and the sugar. So this is Southeast. So yes, I think more in a practical way, we are the right place to do this.
I think that's really interesting and also inspiring to hear, because a lot of the time or a critique that's often given also now in terms to small scale housing, but may it also be small scale detention houses and other initiatives, is that people say, oh, but the city or the community is not ready for it, or we don't have this and this and this in place. And often it's like, oftentimes these things or these dynamics and these relationships and these people are already there, but you need to find a way to foster those relationships and kind of uncover, that's what you described as well, uncover what is already living in the community. And then if you make that effort, you would very quickly realize that this is a place where you could, for example, connect people who may end up in detention with the people who they have been living amongst all this time, or where they will live again after detention. And I think that is again a bit like a mindset shift that some people haven't really gotten there yet, to see that, okay, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we need to take a look at who are our communities, and oftentimes also what is the normal in our communities. Because a lot of times when people say, okay, when we incarcerate people, it should be the life should be as normal as possible to the way it is outside of detention. And then my thought is always, okay, but what is normal? What is living in the community, and what kind of challenges do we see there, and what kind of inequalities do we see there? We can't magically erase everything in detention, but seeing the problem and kind of also accepting what lives actually would enable us to also address it. So I think that's very nice to hear from you as well, kind of how that.
I love the way you are putting it. Actually, you're giving words in a wonderful way. To what I think, Gert Jan, what you and I, we have coffee sometimes, and then we just talk about, what's the next step and what are we going to do. And I love the way you are just talking about the dynamics and how it connects. And I think, it's wonderful, Noa. Thank you.
And I think it's a great compliment, and I totally agree with what Tanja is saying. So it's a compliment to you, Noa, and it's a compliment to the Rescaled community or the movement to be aware of the bigger picture. It's not only by replacing buildings. It's not about buildings. It's about the people. The bricks are not making a building into a building or to a dedicated place. It's the people who make it into a dedicated place of safety. And I think our detention centers of the future might be dedicated places dedicated to safety and not to security. Of course, we need to be very keen on what kind of the thing about the grades and the degrees of what we need to play with the inside and the outside. But really, the core thing, just like the whole Stadsloket in Southeast is dedicated to democracy. I really do believe that the detention centers of the future should be dedicated towards safety and community, of course, because it's not an isolated thing. If any goals at all, I think detention houses should be inclusive in their approach and their concept. And it is possible, because what we now see in Southeast is a development, not, as I mentioned, on detention, but on youth care. The Tafelberg community. It's a fascinating thing to see, because there are 290 young adults, young people are living, amongst which there are 40 people who are in need of extra care. So how beautiful is it to have a special care part of our young citizens to be integrated, to be included into the concept of a community taking care of each other and not even, there are no red and green rooms in this community. There are rooms, there are dominions in this community, in which we can address the common challenge to be a safe community together. While addressing the special care needs of people. So the responsiveness towards needs, and maybe the responsiveness towards risks, is one and the same. It's what we see now in Southeast. And yes, this was a former youth prison that's transformed into a community now. So we can make bricks talk through the mouths of people. That's what I really do believe in. So yeah.
And I think that the point is that we are not like, believing in this kumbaya sort of thing, because we do believe that if we have like this project, then we do need the extra care. We do need some special care, and looking in, okay, what are the special needs? So it's not that we are just like closing our eyes to what is needed, but we do believe that if there is a loving community, then it can work. It really can work. And really addressing what we do need. That this is why I just love the concept of love and law, because yes, we do love, but then again, it's also like we should begrenzen. I don't know the English word for begrenzen.
To limit, yeah.
To limit, thank you so much, to limit. I don't know, I have talked Spanish the whole morning, so my English is like in the back of my head, so I have to look for some words. But then it's limiting. So I do believe like love, law, and limiting, because of that we want this togetherness. We want people to live together, but we know that when people come together, there will be challenging events. And so we're not closing our eyes for that.
I love that you mentioned this, that we're not walking around with our eyes closed. This is also a matter of, often we find with RESCALED, what we're trying to do now is also redefine certain ideas and certain terms, the same way that you also said, Gert Jan, we can move away from security and focus on safety. And so also in terms of detention, for example, one thing we're trying to explore is moving away from these labels of low, medium, and high security, and the way that we kind of ensure security oftentimes through cameras, through systems, and through people. And instead thinking about what if we would say we're not limiting someone, but we are gradually granting more autonomy, and there's different degrees of autonomy that one can kind of regain throughout their individual journey, and from this people who come from a more traditional perspective, or the perspective that we have known from the prison systems that we've had now for over 200 years, that this could be seen as kind of a quote unquote soft approach. Whereas when we've been visiting a lot of small scale facilities which already exist, and we speak to the people who are incarcerated there, they say this is actually much harder. This is much harder than the large-scale prison which I was in before, because there I was just anonymous, and if I didn't want to engage, I didn't need to engage, and I could just sit around. This is really hard. Here I have to take up my responsibility. I'm confronted with my challenges. And I wanted to ask the both of you how you feel about that also, that because like the meeting that you described with the two mothers, that was a really, really hard thing to do. And it's not the soft or the easy way out.
No, you know what is people who criticize and are like, this is soft. I find them a little bit lazy, because the approach we know is an approach, the approach like law and order approach. The law and order approach is a lazy approach, because you don't have to work really. You just put something behind the bars and you're finished. So let it be. This approach is actually we work with the person, we look at the person, we are committed to this person, we're committed to bringing out the goodness in this person. There's a lot of hard work. So no, not soft at all. This is hard work. And if you're not feeling like you want to be part of this approach, I find it hard to believe that you don't want to be part of this approach. this approach of restorative justice, because I think this is the only answer. Really, actually, I'm really a believer of restorative justice, as you can hear. Yeah.
It's beautiful, and it's about seriousness. It's hard. It's the hardest thing to do. It's like staying in connection with the community where those things happen, staying in connection with the people you harmed, and maybe people harmed you as well, is the hardest thing to look the challenge of the past into the eye, into the present that you are now in, to think about, okay, what are the steps that are needed to have this brightness in my, but even in our future. So what can I contribute to my community while I'm here, and why at the moment when I'm there. So it's about impact on communities, it's impact on personal lives as well. And if we look at that from the things we are doing now in detention, okay, what are the impact figures that we want to pinpoint, having the impactful results of detention in our classical sense, and what could be the promise of detention in relation to a whole new approach of nearness, closeness, inclusiveness, etc., etc. So these are our institutions. These are our democratic institutions. We need to take care of those institutions. We give people the authority to take care of our citizens. So we should be present to be there, even when we think about, okay, what should be the impact of these kind of dedicated places in our community, so that the people stay connected. And yes, it's the hardest thing maybe to stay in connection with the community where those things happens. Even challenging the communities around these detention centers to address the question, because there is a we, and we are always, and up until now, the we factor is, and not the I factor, but the we factor is constant present, is where did we go wrong that this happened. It's not only about the individual thing that you should be punished for the things that you have done, but what did we overlook, and having the closeness of
I agree.
We add sanctioning towards the basic care that we owe people, to be happy or whatever, be humane, to develop themselves with their own responsibility as well, because you will be given the opportunity, etc., etc. You need to work it for yourself. It's own responsibility. But where the things did go wrong, and we had some issues already, like poverty, inequality of conditions, etc., etc. already. So there is the we factor. We need to face that, to think about the bedding of social justice, let's call it social justice and inclusiveness, to address the things of the impact of the things we are doing together with people when things went wrong. But can turn into the good for the same reason. It's like and of course, in this respect, you need to rely on the resilience of communities and individuals as well in this togetherness, because I did not become Gert Jan on myself. I'm really connected to a lot of people, and I owe a lot of people respect and gratefulness, because I am who I am, because we are who we are. It's like that.
Wonderful.
So this is the maybe the spiritual or existential connectedness that we all need. So why should we isolate people? That doesn't work.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah,
you rightfully mentioned the taking up accountability as a community, as a society. When I think that's the biggest misstep we have taken when it comes to dealing with crime, is dealing with it as an individual's fault, when all we know about crime is that society produces it, and we as a collective, in the way that we organize our societies, in a way produce it, and our systems were completely built towards that individual, and that individual alone taking up their responsibility. When I think a lot of the people now, their perspective has shifted, but the way that we organize the system and the buildings that we use for it, but also all the rules that we have, and the ways that we also train the people who are and the staff who are supposed to help take care of people in detention are still stuck in that system of this individual and
stuck and isolated, because where did we go wrong? I borrow and I inherit this question from a woman who her brother Joost has been murdered eventually in Amsterdam South East, and she addresses her question in her book What the Fuck. Those were the last words of Joost before he was murdered, and she addresses almost journalistic the questions they had after the murder has committed, and it's all about the we factor and the answers they didn't get from very isolated professionals who thought that it was their job to protect society, while they did not succeed because this person has murdered another person, Joost. And what I saw, because when I think about people who have lost their relatives, their brother from murder, I always that people always think it's about revenge. I know a lot of those people. It's not about revenge. It's about seriousness. It's about responsiveness. It's about, yes, of course, it's about safety and maybe sometimes security, but it's also about care for those people who went totally out of the way doing and committing this. So and even there, and I reply and inherit this to Saskia, the sister of Joost, this week question, where did we go wrong? It comes from those kind of experiences that I think that we need to be on this track of addressing the question, where did we go wrong, and where can we go wrong in the future? And where can we do good in the future? Yeah. All those kind of perspectives that we like in restorative justice.
Thanks for tuning in while we talked Rescaled. We hope today's episode has inspired you to think differently about incarceration and the possibilities for positive change in our communities. To learn more about Rescaled and our mission to support the use of detention houses, visit our website at www.rescale.org. or follow us on social media for the latest updates. Be sure to follow along for more thought-provoking discussions and join us as we sit down with our next guests and continue to explore the path towards building communities that are safe, inclusive, and sustainable. Please also do feel encouraged to reach out to us because we would love to hear your thoughts on shaping the future of detention. Let's keep talking, let's keep listening, and let's keep pushing for a justice system that truly serves all. This is Noa Shoshan, signing off for Let's Talk Rescaled.